the backstory. How did this movie come to be? It's not an obvious topic.
Well, I would say the Velvets are a pretty massive, not obvious topic, but a topic that deserves a serious deep dive, right? And from a point of view of a filmmaker at some point. And it sort of happened through various stages where Lou Reed passed away. Laurie Anderson, of course, is was his wife and oversees the archive. And the archive was she moved the Lou Reed archive to the New York City Public Library. Around that time, I think David Blackman from Universal Music Group was in conversations with, here he is.
Jonathan Richman.
Was in conversations about the potentiality of doing a documentary at that point. And if so, who might be a filmmaker she would feel comfortable approaching to do something like this. And so that's when David came to me and Christine Vachon and asked if it would be a topic that would be of interest to me, whether I'd be interested in doing a doc to begin with. And I was instant. I mean, there was no question. I was utterly honored to be asked. This is music that has affected my life, my orientation around the arts in general. I think it's music that made me imagine a kind of future for myself that as a filmmaker. It's music that's famously described as music that is inherently inspiring to other artists and to other musicians. It's how Brian Eno described the band as a band that released 5,000 records, but that everybody who bought the record started a band.
That was Brian Eno's quote?
That was Brian Eno's, or it's attributed to Eno. But I
Lou Reed Archive is in the New York Public Library.
It is in the New York City Public Archive now. Yes, it is. It is. It's not as vast as you kind of fantasize it being, like full of all kinds of lost recordings and stuff like that. But there's great stuff in there.
Well, let's talk about that because I've never seen any documentary that's as stuffed full of things as this is. The archival footage is just incredible. I mean, we know that a lot of that's from Warhol, but the audio archival stuff. I mean, and you've got like not just 3 or 4 or 5 screens going at one time, that you've got 2 or 3 audio sources going at the same time. And the Leslie, whoa, hats off to you. And what team of buffers did you strap to editing machines to do that?
My 2 partners, man, I wish they were here tonight. Afonso Gonçalves, who I've been working with for many years now, since my miniseries Mildred Pierce. But Adam Kernitz is the other editor on this film. And Fonzie and Adam had worked together on the Jim Jarmusch Stooges doc. And I think that was when Fonz first met Adam. We had an amazing experience on that. And we knew we needed somebody to be working while Fonzie and I went off on my last feature film and got busy. And basically we had taped and recorded all of the interviews in 2018. By the end of 2018, I was off shooting Dark Waters. And throughout 2019, I was finishing it, and then it was released later that year. During that entire time, Adam Kernitz was beginning the first assembly of this cut of the film. And man, I mean, so we had pulled together all of those all of the experimental films. Most of it is experimental films from the 1960s. 45 minutes of this finished film is Warhol material alone. But we ultimately licensed 2.5 hours worth of archive material, including the experimental films, for a 2-hour-long movie because of all the multi-screen components of it. But that just is a mere sliver of what we had as in our database for all the material that was pulled together.
I want to know about the archives that you plumbed, but I'm also curious, how did you know where to look for what? And how many hours did you have to look at to find the 50 hours that you culled down to 2.5 hours?
Yeah.
And who did that?
Well, we all did it together, but I have to make special mention of one of our two archival producers, Brian O'Keefe, who began the process of putting together the list of relevant films that really describe this entire era. And filmmakers that developed Underground were not just casual acquaintances with, but really friends with or lived with, like Jack Smith or Tony Conrad or Piero Helix or friends with Barbara Rubin, Marie Menken, on and on and on, and of course Andy Warhol. And so that began the process. And then once Motto and myself and Brian and Christine, we all went to Pittsburgh and established the relationship with the Warhol Museum, who control all of the Warhol films. That was really the first and sort of preeminent and sort of exemplary example of a relationship to the seminal archives, without which we couldn't have made this movie. And there's no way we could have made a movie without a great relationship with the Warhol Museum.